Now this is a review of the Fender Classic Series 1970s Stratocaster. Now, the 70s era for Fender, also part of the infamous CBS era, is looked down upon by a lot of vintage Fender collectors, and there was somewhat of a good reason why. Fender went through a bit of a quality control issue in the 70s. It wasn't all bad, however, as Fender came out with loads of really fantastic designs and innovations, and really some really sought-after models. The 70s Strat is iconic, even though it's sort of a continuation somewhat of the late 60s model, but also certain designs like the custom and the deluxe Telecaster coming out during the 70s with the wide-ranging humbuckers are really great. Well, I love those guitars. I really like what Fender brought out during the 70s. They decided to immortalise that with having the 70s in their Classic Series products and the Classic Player Series products. Now this is a Classic Series Stratocaster. Now the main difference between the Classic Series and the Classic Player Series is the Classic Series attempts to be more faithful to the original design, whereas the Classic Player Series has been modified and adapted. And the one main part of this guitar where you'll see a sort of a vintage design being there that is that's somewhat questionable to some people, but really good to others, is the fretboard radius itself. Now, the fretboard radius itself is something that is not normally brought up very often in reviews, and to some people, don't really know what it is, they forget about it. It's the actual radius of the curve of the top of the fretboard itself, where your fingers reach. Now, this Classic Series, the Classic Series Stratocaster, for the 50s, 60s and 70s, have more authentic radiuses for the time. Now, this uses the 7¼ inch radius. Most modern guitars, or most modern Fenders nowadays, use a 9½ inch radius. What on earth does this mean? For a lot of people, you may not realise the difference. However, due to the curvature, when you're bending certain notes, they can sometimes sort of die out and choke out. There's a reason that this design hasn't really been brought forward into the more modern, updated Fenders. I experienced the most, though you can get around it, around there. You hear that? It dies, it chokes out. Let me just put on the amp. So this is without the microphones I'm going to be recording later with. It's you hear that? Dying out. Now that is a bit of an overbend, I'll grant you that, but sometimes, depending on where we are, it can sometimes throw you off a bit. I would recommend heavily with this guitar, a lot more than others, to play it first before you order, just to see if you like that stuff. Loads of people, obviously, classic guitars, people go out and play those guitars like this. It's not really a problem for most people. I would always check that out first. That said, let's see what other features we have to look forward to on this guitar. So let's start with the body. This has got an ash body rather than an alder. Ash is a little bit, to me, it always feels a bit heavier. It's quite nice though. I do like it. I have it on my Telecaster as well. It's a pretty standard setup for your Strat. You've got 3 single core pickups here, and these are staggered pole position pickups. Once again, more of a vintage feature in there. They sound a little bit more brittle to me than the other vintage style tuners, vintage style pickups. They just have it up on the site as that they have on the other series. But when I bought this, I played it against a Classic Series 50 Strat. Another main difference between that guitar uses, I believe, uses an older body, but it sounds a little more brittle on this, and that was sort of that 70s Fender sound. And a part of that is believed to be because around this time, Leo Fender, who was still working for the company, even though he'd sold to CBS, was starting to lose his hearing. And when you lose your hearing, it's always the top end that goes first. So it would sort of make sense if you wind these pickups to sound higher and brighter and more brittle, because you'd hear them better. That's why you should always have other people in charge, not just one person, otherwise you end up with pickups like this. However, they do give you an iconic sound. On that we have 5-way pickup select switch, master volume, then you've got a tone for the neck pickup and a tone for the middle pickup. Once again, this is spec'd out to be exactly classic, so you're not going to have a tone wide to the bridge, even though that's really where it's needed. You might get that more in the Classic Player Series, but you know, you can always make these modifications yourself, and in the modifications part of this video I'm going to say that I do plan on doing something somewhat similar to that. Next we have the 6-screw synchronized tremolo. Now to those of you who don't know, once again a little bit of a Leo Fenderism here. The effects that these units produce is not tremolo. A tremolo is a fluctuation of volume. This produces vibrato, fluctuation of pitch. And that simply comes down to the fact that Leo Fender himself was more of an engineer, more of a creator. He wasn't really a musician, so you can't really get him. You can't really get too much on his case for getting it wrong. But it's stuck. A lot of people know this as a tremolo unit, even though, like I said, it does not produce the effect of tremolo. It produces the effect of vibrato. Now I have mine decked, which, as you can see, it's flat against the body, so I can't bend it upwards. I can only bend it downwards. So I could go, but I can't go. It just won't go up. But for my use case, I'm just gonna bend the string and go up anyway. So it's not too much of an issue for me. But then when you bring it around the back, we get one of the points of contention. We have the 3-screw neck plate rather than a 4-screw. Now this was a big point of contention in the 70s, as it was seen as some people saw it as cheaping out, and some people accused it of causing quality control issues. However, with this reissue, it feels just as solid to me as a 4-screw one. Now, if you've ever seen my video on my old Washburn Twisty Stealth done by Darryl Signature, you realise I only had 2 screws. Now, 3 feels a lot nicer. And something else here that we have is the micro neck adjust. That little bit right there, you get an Allen wrench in there and you can adjust the action even more. That has stuck on high-end Fenders, specifically Strats, basically ever since, and it's still used today. And that's one of the innovations that's stuck around. Then we get on to the neck. Now the neck's a bit of a weird one. It's a U-shape neck. Now, a lot of classic sort of 50s, 60s, going into 60s era Fenders use the V-shaped neck. And I really like the V-shaped neck. It's nice and fat, feels great in your hand, great for chords, great for solo playing I think as well, and it's stuck. Modern day, we tend to use the C-shaped neck, but the U is a kind of weird one. Now, the best way I would describe it is, it feels somewhat like an Ibanez neck, but fatter. It feels a little bit flatter around the back, so you can do, if you're going to use thumb behind the back, correct technique, it helps with that a lot. But for chords, it feels a bit different, a bit weird. It's not uncomfortable, but it definitely takes some getting used to. This can be a make or break. Once again, like I said, with this guitar in particular, as well as all guitars I think you should do, is play it before you buy it. Myself, I quite like it. I played it up against a 50s Strat, which has a lovely V-shaped neck that I really like, and I went for this one. Partially because I already had a V-shaped neck on my Telecaster. And then we have the super fat, chunky, some people call it a Hendrix Headstock. Now these were first produced in the late 60s, but now this is a 70s version. And a big thing there, the 70s one, was this bullet truss rod adjuster. Now before that, with previous Fender guitars, the truss rod adjuster itself was down here, but it wasn't properly accessible unless you modified your guitar. So if you wanted to adjust your truss rod, you had to take the neck off, screw it, and then put it back in, rather than just doing it this way. This, once again, has stuck. Not through the bullet design. They've done it the sort of more, you can say, Gibson-y way, having the hole in there, sticking in rather than having a bullet coming out. But thank God this is stuck around in Fenders, because it's such a pain trying to adjust your truss rod without. On the back we have these nice Fender stamped tuning pegs. I think they're very nice, and they are the vintage style, sort of inspired by Clouson top-loading tuning pegs. If you've never played a guitar that uses them, it takes a little bit of adjustment to get used to restringing with them, but I honestly think they are superior to a standard style tuner. And I have actually modded out some guitars, or plan on modding out some guitars in the future still, that have the normal sort of string through the centre of the side, not for the top, design tuning peg. With these, I just think they lock down so beautifully. Now, one small adjustment I've made is I popped in these nice low friction Fender string trees. The normal sort of batwing, bird, butterfly, whatever you want to call them, string trees I had before was catching a bit. If you're using the vibrato arm, the iron bar, I would always recommend changing them for something low friction. You don't want to be dealing with stuff like that happening. It's just a pain. And this is a Mexican instrument, and so as you can expect, the build quality is going to be absolutely fantastic, as I feel like they always are. The electronics are the sort of cheaper side of it, however, they're still, I'd still say they're quite high end. I've played quite a lot of Mexican Fenders where I'm happy to leave the electronics how they are. They sound really good. It's almost as if you've got yourself an American Fender, but just with some different electronics in. That to me is a fantastic deal. personally, and I haven't really had any problems with this guitar, other than one small one. Now, with the more classic, sort of more Clouson looking vintage tuners, I've been able to go up to my preferred string gauge, which is 11, with no problems. However, on this guitar, the low E string wouldn't slot in properly to begin with, so I actually had to use a screwdriver just to pry this open just a little bit, just to widen it up to get it in there. I haven't really had this on any other guitar, could just be my unit. So last few things before we actually listen to it. All the versions currently come with white scratch pickup only. You can get them in a couple of different finishes, and you can get it with either a rosewood or a maple fretboard. I personally prefer playing on maple fretboards. I almost said tremolo then. The vibrato on the back uses 3 strings to begin with. Because I use 11s on standard, I've actually upped them to 5. I had to go out and buy those extra. And the nut is synthesized bone, plastic. And we've got vintage style, so the thinner frets. So if you prefer having yourself some thicker frets, you might have a look at some of the classic Player Series guitars, which sometimes change the frets just a little bit. So let's hear how this guitar sounds. I'm going to be testing all pickups, and I'm going to be running through, I'm going to be doing clean, crunch and distorted. I'm going to be going through a couple of pedals, but very rarely using them. Straight into my Laney VH100R. It's going to be using a little bit of reverb, and I've got a Rode NT1A and a Shure SM57 going into an M-Track M Audio and going into Pro Tools. Let's hear how she sounds. think of it? Well, first off, I'm going to talk about possible modifications. Now, to some people, a guitar like this would be perfect. And actually, another review I've seen of this, the guy says it's basically his holy grail guitar. Once again, that comes up to your playing. To me, there's a couple of things I want to modify. So, as I've already mentioned, the string trees I've modified. Other than that, I'm still working on the old vibrato, trying to get it a bit more stable, a bit more what I want it to be. Other than that, for me, the modifications are going to come through the electronics. Oh, also I've stuck some more springs to the back for my string gauge. Now, what I'm about to say, you're probably going to look at me and go, Adam, why did you buy a Strat if you're going to say this? But I would like hotter pickups. So once again, Adam, why have you bought a guitar for 3 single chords? I love the sound. And when I bought this guitar, and part of the reason why I bought a 70s specific Strat is because I absolutely love Ritchie Blackmore, the guitarist of Deep Purple, Rainbow, and Blackmore's Night, his current project. And that sound that he gets going through a British valve amp is just so powerful and so great to me. Other Strat players I love are obviously all the guys from Iron Maiden, hence why I'm now thinking of getting more powerful pickups. Rory Gallagher and Eric Johnson. I do love a bit of Eric Johnson. And they all get this massively thick sound out of their Strat. And a lot of the time, when they get that sound, they're using certain things that have it set up for the Strat. Now, I tend to use lots of different guitars, and most of my guitars have humbuckers in. So that sound always, to me, when I try that kind of setup with those guitars, sounds a bit muddy. So I'm going to modify the guitar over modifying how I run the rest of my rig. Now, I really love the sort of single coil sized humbuckers that people like Silver Duncan do, so I'm probably going to stick that one in the bridge. I'm probably going to stick something a bit bright in the middle, because I want to try and get that to be somewhat of a replacement for my bridge, so I still want that sound, and then I'm going to get a sort of a higher, maybe like a custom higher output single coil on the top. So I'm mostly keeping it single coil, it'd be HSS. Other than that, I'm considering removing one of the tone pots and just having a master tone, which then would affect all 3 pickups. And I'd like to have a switch do something else. And I'm thinking when I do that, I might do a video about that. So I'm gonna keep that to myself at the moment. This guitar, I would say it is compared to a 60s and 50s style Strat. It's a more useful guitar. There's more adjustments that can be made back and all of this it can be made. However, from a playability standpoint, because of the odd neck shape and the quite bright pickups compared, a lot of people may prefer the 50s and 60s. Once again, go out and try it for yourself. There's only one way to know what you like. This is the holy grail for some people. For me, it's almost there as a Strat. But I feel like I'm such a picky player that anything would be almost there, but not quite. I've had plans to modify basically all of my guitars. I'm just one of those irritating kind of people. But however, if I did want a Strat with single coil pickups, this has served me. I've already had this guitar for a couple of years without feeling the need yet to modify it. And I think, given the style of music I play, that says something about how good this guitar is. Don't let the idea of the free bolt or the sort of bad reputation that some of the CBS, some of the 70s era Strats have. Like I said, this is built with more modern standards and is a solid as a rock guitar. And if you want a Strat with ash body rather than an older, this might be your best way in. Even if you're not a fan of, say, the setup, say you want a HSH, just modify it. But you've got that ash body right there. Really, really fantastic guitars, especially if you're into playing, Ritchie Blackmore, other people like that. 70s rock. Even though you've got to bear in mind, a lot of 70s stuff was recorded with guitars from 60s or 50s. If you imagine guitars you might own now, when did you buy them? You might have bought them last decade. You start using now. And just one last point on the fretboard radius and the U-shaped neck. Try it. It's for some people it is absolutely perfect. For others it feels a bit weird. It takes a little bit of getting used to. Play it for a bit. You might really like it. I've learned, especially when I'm doing stuff like bar chords and scales and soloing, that I really like this shape of neck now. And my example I made earlier, where I said I sort of compared it to an Ibanez style neck but thicker, to me it's the better version of that neck. If you prefer slightly thicker necks, because obviously Ibanez is a super skinny necks. Now it's got a polyester finish on the body, and a urethane on the back. So to some people, they won't like that. They would either want nitrocellulose or something like a satin. Just play it. It's great. The good thing about the urethane finishes are they're not quite as sticky as the nitrocellulose finishes are, even though they're a bit thicker, and you can always just shave it down. But that's part of what you get from a Mexican Strat, but like I said, Mexican Strats are absolutely fantastic. So yeah, let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. If you've bought one yourself, let me know what you think of it, or if you're considering buying one, I'd love to hear what you have to say. And yeah, if you enjoyed, please like, share and subscribe. I hope you found this useful, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.